an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, the book club, covering childhood favorite, Watership Down. A particular favorite of RoShawn, who is here with me to cover this today. It is by Richard Adams. It has bunnies in it. I did not like it, and I feel bad.
Oh, my heart.
Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha.
I am heartbroken. Also known as RoShawn.
Yeah, I walked it because you and I have very similar tastes most of the time. There are things that will be a little bit more emotional than I'm ready for, that you get off on the pain, I think it's part of what it is.
It is true. I'm a bit of a masochist.
I'm ready for that to not always be true, but mostly, when something is like a real favorite of yours, I'm like, all right, cool. And I walked into this book ready to really love it. Mm-hmm. I was ready for brutal animal stuff because I knew there was lots of blood in the stills that I have seen of the cartoon. And sort of, I feel like I was mentally prepared for what I thought this was going to be. Okay. And it was really hard for me to finish.
Oh,
this is probably the first book that I've skimmed. Yeah. I genuinely have started skimming because I was just like, when is something going to happen? Please. Oh my God. And I just feel really bad because I wanted to like it for your sake and for a lot of the people's sake. Watret in the comments, I just finished the book a few minutes ago. I'm relieved that I'm not the only one who didn't love it. And I feel like that, I'm not sure what that's about. How, you really love this book. You volunteered for it right away. How old were you when you first read this?
I saw the movie first.
Okay.
The movie came out in 78. I probably saw the movie when I was about 7 or 8 years old.
Oh wow, that's young for something that bloody, it looks like.
And I loved it. I loved it immediately. I loved the movie. I am not one of those people who movie particularly violent.
Okay.
Or overly graphic. I didn't have the experience of being like, oh, I went into this thinking it was a children's movie and this is content that I wasn't expecting. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any of that reaction to the movie. And then I read the book when I was probably about 12. And I raced through it. I was captivated, I finished it super fast. And there are certain things that I'm a sucker for that will get me every time. One of those things is really imaginative world building. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things about the book is that he creates an entire mythology and a way of life and expectations of behavior that feels very real to the animals that he's using. Mm-hmm. He doesn't just, in my opinion, say, let's do a story that that could be about people, but just put it in the form of rabbits. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm a sucker for made up languages. Any book that has to come with a glossary at the end, I'm going to love it. And I did the audiobook because our bookshelf situation is just a mess, and I didn't feel like digging for the copy that we own. But I was like, let me see if I can find it. Let me put a minimum amount of effort in, see if I can find the book. And I found our copy of it. And this is our copy. of Watership Down. It doesn't. It no longer has a cover or a back.
Damn.
But one of the things you get in the book is, and which is missing from the audiobook, which is just a bit of a bummer, is as the story is being told, he has footnotes, right? So, like, there's a thing in the book about a game the rabbits play called Bobstones, and it's just part of the story. Like, it's in one of the LRA stories. But there's a little footnote, well, you can't see it, that explains what the game is and how it works. You know, it's just taken very, very seriously. And I will always, there's maps in the book, you know, to show where they travel from. It's little things like that I'm always going to love.
Yeah, I actually was a little bit like, oh, yeah, I didn't, because I was listening to the audiobook at first, and I realized, like, when you're reading, you go faster than the audiobook. And I was like, I'm starting to run out of time here, so I'm going to have to sit down and read this. And I noticed that there were a bunch of, and I had the Kindle too, so like the footnotes you can tap and it just brings you to the thing. And there was a map, because I didn't start reading instead of listening until I got to the part where they start to, they find Ephrafe? What's the name of the other Warren?
Yeah, that's it.
And there's the map that tells you how Bigwig like got away, you know, and all of the attacks, like where they happen and whatnot. And I really liked that aspect of it. And I wish that I had even known that was there before I started doing the audiobook, because it does sort of change the vibe of it as you go along. It feels more interactive somehow with that. And I do think that probably would have helped.
Yeah.
So
the audiobook for me was, like I said, you know, I was enjoying, because the narrator is pretty good, but it was no comparison to the experience of like reading the book for me.
Yeah, I could see that.
But that tends to be my experience with audiobooks in general. So, but for this particular book, I really feel like reading it is the way to go if you can.
Yeah. Yeah, with my only half doing that, I have to agree. And normally audiobooks are a thing that, like, I get really engrossed and feel like, you know, even when the narrator isn't that good, sometimes it just doesn't matter. Like I was talking to you about recently doing Poisonwood Bible, and the narrator for that is terrible. I don't know what they were thinking, but it's such a great story. It eventually stops mattering.
Right.
And
you told me that you are not a big fan of the journey type of books on just in general.
Yeah, so guys, you know, I'm one of the people that started Lord of the Rings and then just was like, oh, whatever. And just stopped middle of the first book. Like, just, it's different when
I didn't know you stopped.
Yeah. I started reading the first book and I just fucking lost interest and just
Have
stopped.
you never read, so you never read them?
No.
Oh, wow. I don't think I realized that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another, like, I love those books. The movies are great and all, but to me, the books, there's no contest.
I don't know why it's so much easier for me to suspend my impatience with a movie or a TV show. I don't know what that's about, because the movies I grew obsessed with, and I actually got approved for an internship working at Weta Workshops, who did all of the like props and all of that for the movies.
Shut the front door.
Yeah, I had a very good portfolio at the time, let me tell you.
No shit.
But I wound up realizing that way lay madness and decided to not do that as my major anymore. I do sometimes wonder if I had done it, would I have like had this amazing experience, or would I have been like, why did I do this to myself?
You would have ended up working on Game of Thrones, probably.
You make that, like, when you just say that, it sounds great, but the reality of what that means,
yeah, that shit is pretty intense.
You know, like,
Did you ever get around to watching the end, the behind the scenes of Game of Thrones, where they just focus on the crew?
No, I have to do that.
It's really good. It's
I
really,
should.
really good.
But yeah, so this, I didn't realize going into that this was what it was. I didn't know it was a journey story. Yeah. And I don't think I even realized until I started talking to you about it that is a problem for me. That even if I had known when I started this, it wouldn't have made a difference in how I approached it, because I think I'm only just starting to see that about myself. When there is when there is a more focused goal in mind that doesn't feel so wending, when there's like bits along the way that I feel like we're aiming for, it breaks it down for me in a more manageable, like organized way in my brain.
And that's completely not part of this story.
Not
Like they
even
said,
a little bit.
The journey, the action starts with, not only do they not know where they're going, but they're not even 100% sure what they're running away from.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I think, for my personality type, that probably speaks to me especially, because I tend to live my life very much in that way, where there is a sort of nebulous, undefined thing that I need to get away from, you know, and it doesn't even matter for sure where I end up, or I don't know if I'm going to make it to the other place, but it becomes really important to just get away and get somewhere else.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know?
I didn't think about that, but...
And I think, like, at the time when I was reading it as a kid, in the movie and all, like, I wasn't aware of that in me. I didn't have that self-awareness at the time. But in hindsight, that feels very true for me. Especially at that age where I was in the middle of feeling very much like that in my own life. Like, you know, that things were changing and something, there was like an impending doom. And I needed to, you know, get away. Yeah. So I am also like those types of stories, those types of journeys to like get to a better place always sort of speak to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And I think that's like, my personality is such that I'm not leaving until I have a map and an itinerary and a plan and a location.
Do I have snacks?
Set up. Yep. You know, like, and the idea of, I am glad at the very least, because this all starts off because a little rabbit named Fiver has a vision, and Fiver is based on Cassandra. Is like, there's a whole foreword by the author of, he told the story to his little girls in the car over the course of like a couple of weeks, and they basically when he finished, they were like, that's a really good story and you should not like just forget about it. And Fiver is believed when he tells his friend, like the head rabbit doesn't believe him, but his friend does. And enough people pay attention that they're like, oh, we started to amass like a small crowd actually that's willing to come with us. That's unexpected. So I liked that, because there's nothing as frustrating as somebody having a really pointed sort of prophecy moment and nobody listens. And it continues to happen, and they, despite being irritated with him a lot of the time, usually listen. Yeah. And I like that a lot. I appreciate it.
I love that there's really intense character development for our main rabbits. You know, I love to, like, the little tidbits about, like, Fiver is called that because rabbits, like, don't count past, like, 4, I guess it is. So and so he's the
an
one
outlier,
of his litter,
right?
You know, and one of the last born. So he's just like that. You know, it's almost like a throwaway thing, right? And I love that when he talks to Hazel, like, Hazel trusts him, like you said. There's not a lot of, oh God, Fiver again with your nonsense.
Yeah, the only time when they really run into that is when Fiver is refusing to settle down with Cowslip's Warren. And everybody is aware. Like, that was the one that I got the most angry about, that they didn't believe him, because everybody can tell something's wrong here already. Right.
They're just so. I love too, because the whole thing, like everything. You know what it makes me think of? Remember Lord of the Rings. But remember at the beginning how important it is to tell us, the audience, what hobbits are like. You know? So that you understand how important and almost incredible it is that you have these 4 hobbits that are going on this journey, because it's so against what they are naturally built to do. You know?
Right.
so I get the same feeling about the rabbits. Like, it is, like, their main function is just, like, comfort, eating, breathing, you know, and the occasional mischief, because that is just their makeup. Like, they're not adventurous beings. Mm-hmm. So it's remarkable that this little band of rabbits is willing to leave the comfort of home and the safety of home based solely on the vision of this weird, shaky little rabbit, you know?
Yeah.
And
shaky,
that
indeed.
that keeps coming back because it's like their primary motivation. So when they get to Cowslip's Warren and there's plenty of room and plenty of doughs and plenty of food, even though they all know something is not quite right, their natural instinct is just to be like, but this is all we need though, right? Mm-hmm. This is everything we're asking for. Of course we should stay here. And then you find out that that place is terrible.
Yeah, I had, it was sort of like, I'm saying I'm really glad that they listened and, you know, paid attention and everything. And I most definitely am, but I have to tell you, because there's this amazing moment where they go to speak to the chief rabbit. And, you know, this is where we first meet Bigwig as well, who winds up being totally, like, the most stand-up of the rabbits, the one that you want on your side, like the ride or die. But they go and see the chief rabbit, and Hazel is trying to sort of rep on Fiverr's behalf because he knows, like, Fiver is just not going to be convincing.
He's right.
Like,
this is not the person you want speaking for the group. Like, people are not going to take this guy seriously at all.
And he just says, like, he says he can see a bad danger. A bad danger. Yes, I see. How very upsetting. Now, what sort of danger, I wonder? And Fiver's just kind of like, I don't know. It's bad. It's real bad. And then he's trying to get him to, like, give something tangible, anything, you know? And this conversation goes on until finally Fiver says, but there's no time. I can feel the danger like a wire around my neck, like a wire. Hazel, help! He squealed and rolled over in the sand, kicking frantically as a rabbit does in a snare. And I'm just like,
this rabbit is insane. Like, no one is going to, like, join your fucking ragtag group, sir, when you're, like, having fits in front of everybody.
Just that moment is so, I know it's completely sincere. I know Fiver can't help it. I know he's seeing a real thing that's going to happen. And yet all I just want to do is slap him and be like, get up, bitch. Nobody cares. Stop it. We're here doing what you're trying to do. I get it, but this isn't helping.
Right, yeah, this is not helpful. Oh, God.
It just sounds like Trelawney. All I could picture was Trelawney being like, the Grim.
That's what it is, though. It's like this fucking, you know, the weight of being able to see what's coming. But also, just because Fiver sees it, he doesn't mean he understands what he sees, right? There's no words. And then later on in the book, when we find out what happened, right? There are no rabbit words for what that was. Like, it would be like if I saw a vision of some alien race plotting to do something to the earth, right? But I didn't understand their language. I didn't understand their technology. All I know is it's terrible what these things are planning to do with us, right?
Yeah.
He literally doesn't have the language to explain what he's seeing. It's so foreign to them. That's another thing I love about it too, is that when they encounter things, especially man-made things, and they don't know what the fuck a car is, you know, and they have like a herd-to-do or whatever they call it. Herd-to-do. And like the train, like, you know, when they're running, and what saves Holly and the others is that a train goes by, and their description of it is what I would sound like if aliens were coming to Earth, and I was trying to be like, you know what I mean? It's so beyond.
Yeah, they don't even think that it's like a man-made thing. They think that was like the Frith stepping in and sending something. Yeah,
it's so like it's so crazy that their explanation is it's got to be like God, you know.
Yep.
So it makes me. That's the thing too about when Fiverr is having like his fit of vision when he's supposed to be like calm and appearing rational because you're trying to inspire confidence. And the Chief Rabbit is just like, so basically what you're saying is I should just evacuate everybody and we should all just run into the woods where there's no cover and no safety because what
Indeed.
And you want to be like, oh, that Chief Rabbit is like, he was so hard-headed, he should have listened. But should he have?
You know,
based on the argument that they made.
Yeah, I'd be really interested in knowing what kind of like reputation Fiverr has. Does anybody know that he's seen things that happened before? Has that happened before?
Hazel says that he has experienced Fiverr being right about things.
Yeah, that's
having
right.
like a good instinct, but they don't give us specifics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure Fiverr hasn't done anything like this, like how the book starts. It's been probably things like where to find the best food and like maybe where a predator might be, like in behind the bushes or something, but nothing of this magnitude.
Yeah, this is probably the most dramatic thing to happen in a rabbit's life. Like their warren just being completely cleared out. So it makes sense that he's never dealt with something like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically I really, and I also really like when this started out, I was into the first parts of it because I like that Hazel's listening to Fiverr. I like that even when the Chief Rabbit is like, thanks for coming. Bye. There's no hesitation. Hazel's just like, all right, well, I believe you, so I guess we're leaving. And it barely takes any convincing on Fiverr's part to get Hazel to go. I loved that because it just felt like that was such a nice declaration of real trust. And so when this started, I thought what we were doing was going to be a wacky sort of plan to watch the men try and do a thing and then ruin their plans somehow and save the warren kind of thing. Oh, yeah. I was picturing like a Redwall style, like organized battle, except not with Redwall. It's like animals actually having weapons, and it's not as like this is a very realistic rabbits in a warren.
Redwall?
Redwall are the books that are written by Brian Jacques, in which Redwall is the name of the abbey that they all live in, and it's all these animals that are the good animals in quotes are mice and badgers and they all live together, even though that is not how anything would ever happen. And then they are inevitably attacked at some point by rats, weasels, stoats, kinds of things. And they're like a series of epic stories that are the abbey is really lush and safe, and people want it. All of these different animals want it because it would just be a really safe, great place to live. So they just are under attack a lot. And the Redwall book is the first one he wrote. And that was sort of, I don't think I even realized that was sort of what I was thinking, because those books are very bloody. Like, there's a rat that is in charge, and one of his lieutenants, fucks up, and he, punches him until he falls off a cart, and then they roll the cart over him and just leave him to die in a ditch. And so I was ready for it. But this was a lot more like, we're going to have these animals be as intelligent in their way, but they're still living in what we humans know to be how rabbits live. It's not, we're not going to alter that culture, and we're going to build up a mythology around something that already exists.
Right.
Yeah,
I'd never heard of those.
Yeah, so it's like I realize after getting more into it, that's not how this author is trying to make rabbits work. These rabbits are at the mercy of human beings because that is what animals experience. He's trying to be as realistic about that as he can. But like going into it without realizing what he really was doing, I thought this was going to be the animals outsmart the humans and save the day kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, no, it's pretty, I guess, like, one of the things that would be difficult for people when they read this, especially children, is that it starts with this vague threat, and you go through a good portion of the book, and you just kind of, or you just take it that, okay, they left because danger was coming, but we don't know what the danger is, and we're moving on with our story. And then when Holly and Bluebell show up, and they tell us what happened. And it's pretty horrible. Like, I don't think that we are meant to understand at the beginning of the book just how serious this threat is that Fiver knows is coming. And that kind of, when you start the book, because you don't know these rabbits from Adam. And Fiver is so kind of over the top with his expression of this thing that's happening that you're kind of just like, oh, how bad could it have been? And then you hear how bad it was. And it's, you know, it's the whole warren is wiped out, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how many, but a great number of rabbits are killed in a terrifying way. And as a kid reading it, I imagine you'd be like, well, that was really dark for a children's book. Yeah.
I'm really curious, like, sorry, go ahead.
No, you got it.
Well, I was just going to say, like, when people do construction, do they do this? Do they try and flush out rabbit warrens? Or do they just go in there with their fucking bulldozers and just clear the place out and run over the rabbits and crush them to death with machinery? Because I feel like that sounds like how it's done now.
Did you ever read or see The Secret of Nim? Nymph?
Nim.
I don't know how to say it. Not Nymph.
I never saw it. I read it a long time ago.
Yeah. It's the very same story where this little area where these animals live is in the line of new construction, and bulldozers and heavy earth movers are coming to like just graze over or raise over this whole area. This book is also pretty old, you know.
Right.
I feel like they probably don't do it the way it's described in this book anymore. You know, they probably just come in and just move everything out the fucking way and don't give a fuck. But
maybe the equipment like early on wasn't good enough to continue to function if it like ran into actual animals, so it was easier to clear stuff out. And now they can probably just like go ahead and get on with it and not have to even think about that.
Right. And also, like, the way that the warren is described, how it's built, it's all under, like, heavy roots and stuff. So, you know, I guess there's a moving of a lot of trees out of the way, too, when you come into an area like this. But for the animal, it must just be, like, the end of the world. Like, it must really feel like the end of the fucking world. But to us, it's like, you know, a new housing development's going up around the corner. You know,
Holly says something like, and it just like this machine came out a hoodoo bigger than I've ever seen, and it destroyed the field. And I think it's Hazel that's like, destroy. Okay, you clearly don't mean that,
right?
So what do you mean? And he's like, no, I do. It destroyed the field, and he's just like, I don't even understand what that means,
right?
Yeah.
So, but then, so they leave and they get a nice little, well, when they leave, they have to like make a break for it because they're being chased. That's the other thing too. Like the rabbits have this little, like this whole hierarchy in their little community, you know, and there's a security detail that is just like normal for rabbits to have, apparently, right?
Ausla.
The Ausla. And they have to like make a break for it, and they encounter the little stream. I love this moment so much, and Blueberry? Blackberry?
Blackberry.
Comes up with the idea of like being able to raft across it, basically, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And the rabbits are just like, that's crazy talk. What do you mean?
I love that they're looking right at the piece of like floating wood and they're like, float. What? That's not a word. And he's like, it stays on top of the water. Do you see that it stays and you can climb on it and it'll stay? And they're like, yeah, I'm not following you. Like, basically, they just have to be like, okay, follow me onto this thing, and we're just going to let Bigwig do this because we don't need you to understand it. Just fucking listen, okay? Like,
I feel like that's how I feel with pretty much anything. Like, I'm on the computer right now with you, doing video and audio, and I know those are all words, you know, but like, you could not pay me. There's no amount of money that you could offer me that would make me be able to explain how any of this works right now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just doing it because you said if I clicked on the email, your face would pop up on my screen. And that's just how it works.
Yep. Yeah, I frequently think about, like, if I got plunged back in time because of a couple things that I've been watching lately, knowing about technology and knowing that things can be done and having no concept of how to do them. Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to, like, all right, I have to build this system of irrigation for a few and, like, figure out how to do plumbing. That's a very tactile sort of, you know, trial and error, something that I can really get the physics of. And when you get any more advanced than that, I'm sorry. That's it.
That's like the joke / real life observation of the Amish. I think I've said this before on a different podcast where, like, if you think about the Amish nowadays, the thing that stands out to us is how they don't use any sort of modern technology and how backwards and behind the times it all is. But up until like 1890, they were just like everybody else.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And then technology did such a leap that now they seem like really anachronistic, like, you know, horses and buggies. But for a minute, they were just like, you know, Josiah next door. There was nothing special or different about them, you know?
Josiah next door.
So
that's the porn parody of some Amish movie.
Get your hot Amish porn. She shows an ankle and the guys go crazy.
Man, get a load of those elbows. Yeah, somebody should write a book of, like, from the perspective of an Amish family when the zombie apocalypse finally hits.
Oh my God.
And everybody is, like, trying to do the shit they've been doing. And all of a sudden they're interested. Oh, now we're not so crazy. Now you want our help.
Right.
Okay.
Now you want our canned vegetables and our marmalades. Oh, you need to build a roof? You know, you need to build a barn real quick?
Yeah,
now
well, good luck with
laughing?
that. I'm going to go sleep in my bed that I have. Oh, God. I wonder, but so, yeah, they use this and float across, and Bigwig pushes it because Bigwig's a badass. He's got, like, a top knot is what it keeps being called, of, like, fur at the top of his head.
Yeah. It's, let me see if they have it in the...
I keep picturing him as Elvis a little bit. Not because, like, Elvis had a top knot, but just, like, really extreme hair that gets your attention.
He had quite the pompadour, Elvis.
Yeah.
Had a magnificent set of hair. Where is it?
I've never heard it called a set of hair. Was there illustrations in your copy?
No, I was looking for his name, like his rabbit name, and what it means.
Let's see. I'm trying to find. Walnut, isn't it? Hazel, said Hazel. Let's see. He was now, as Bigwig said, getting old, but he was still clear enough. Okay, so I'm a little ahead. Let's see. Oh, yeah, here it is. Here they were stopped by a large, heavily built rabbit, one of the Ausla. He had a curious, heavy growth of fur on the crown of his head, which gave him an odd appearance, as though he were wearing a kind of cap. This had given him his name, Flaily, which means, literally, fur head, or as we might say, bigwig. Yeah.
So good. So, they're on their journey, and I think the first thing they run into is the snare warren, right?
Yeah, with cowslip.
And these rabbits are a little odd. You know,
I'll say this. I was really on board until right after this part, because I thought that this author did a really good job of building the tension that something was fucking weird about this place. Like, it makes me think of like the previews for Midsummer, where everything is like sweetness and light, but you can sense that like something is under this that's not okay. And it all looks idyllic and beautiful, but like, what's happening though? This freaked me out. You know?
I love one of the things that he does to differentiate these rabbits from the rabbits that we're watching, that, you know, our rabbits, is they have like art, you know, they have created like pictures with like stones and stuff, right?
Right.
And then when one of our rabbits, I think it's Dandelion, tells a story, and none of the rabbits there like get it or appreciate it. They're not like happy about it at all.
Yeah.
And we find out that because they're living so against their nature, that it has literally changed, you know, what is natural for rabbits to do and to think and behave. And they're like, one of the things in this warren, and me and Steve still talk about this too, is that when rabbits disappear, they don't talk about them. It's like they never existed.
It's a very 1984 sort of system.
It kind of, you know, it kind of is. And I know that there's people have said over the years, like, there's all this symbolism. Miles made a joke about it in the thread. The writer Adams has always like stayed away from that.
Yeah.
You know, and again, because I read it when I was so young, I probably missed whatever symbolism there was to be had. You know, if he was making any kind of grand sweeping statements about humanity,
right?
I just didn't. You know, I just didn't get it. But when you read it when you're older and you think about, well, what do we sacrifice in order to be comfortable and survive? You know, we're kind of in a moment, especially now, politically, just in the world in general.
Yeah.
Like, terrible, terrible things are happening, you know, and we just say, well, there's really not much I can do about that, you know. I'm just going to keep going to work and eating my food and hoping that it doesn't get me every time I walk out my house, you know. Oh, but it got that other guy. That's a shame, you know.
What
that other
a
guy
shame.
got, you know, that other guy got caught up in the snare of not having health insurance or the snare of not being a citizen. You know what I mean?
I hate this comparison. Shut up. It's depressing me.
Sorry.
Life.
You know? And Fiverr is all of us screaming on Facebook. Like, how do you not see what's happening?
Right, yeah.
This isn't how we're supposed to live. This is very unnatural and dangerous, and we shouldn't stay here. This is terrible.
Yeah, there's this whole like tense build up to it of they meet this rabbit who looks really healthy and strong, and like they're like, what's the deal? This guy like he even smells like he's healthy,
Yep.
but like in a way that's alarming somehow.
Yep.
And he's very unconcerned about a group of strange rabbits showing up and seems totally at ease. And what is this? And then they are invited in and he seems perfectly like, but all of the other rabbits are very subdued and they're friendly and they're welcoming, but they just don't seem right.
This warren doesn't have an Owsley either.
Right.
It doesn't have the natural rabbit sort of way a warren functions. They don't have a chief rabbit either.
Yep.
I mean, Cowslip is kind of low-key in charge, but you get the feeling that he's only in charge because he's the rabbit that found them. You know, like it could have been any other rabbit from the warren that ran into them, and then that rabbit would be the one we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like gradually like they go up to feed and there's all this amazing food that's been left, obviously left. And they're all just like, I don't get, why would somebody leave this? Like, are you sure it's safe to eat this? And they're like, yeah. Also, gather it up and bring it inside. And they're like,
right? Like rabbit, they're like, what? We don't, what?
I don't even know how to carry things. What are you talking about? Like, I just picture like a rabbit, like picking something up in its paws and then like trying to hop and like tipping over and then just being like, and just sort of rolling like the rest of the way to the entrance of the warren, just like rolling over while it's like clutching the thing.
And the other rabbits are just like, why would you just use your mouth though?
Right? Like, I just,
yeah. Oh God, that's funny.
There's a part in Community where Jeff is trying to act like, well, if you think about it, those words don't mean anything. And he's trying to be smart about something. And Annie's like, oh, really? It doesn't mean anything? Well, I guess, and she stands in front of him as he's walking. And she's like, I'll just stop walking then. Because what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. And then she's like, you know what? Maybe I'll just stop standing. And she falls flat to the floor. And she's like, you know what? Maybe I'll just stop talking language. And she like rolls around and just goes, blah, 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 blah. And he like steps over her and just goes to class and leaves her there. But that's kind of what you feel like is happening here, because he's just like, do all these things that you've never done that you don't know why I'm asking, that make no sense at all. Like, and they just have to because they're here. They're kind of guests at this point.
And this is just what they do here. So they don't want to be rude.
Yeah.
You know? That's the other thing too, is that they don't want to be ungrateful for the hospitality. So there's just a lot of them looking at each other like, what the fuck is up with these rabbits? Like, right? But nobody wants to be the one to say it except fucking Fiverr, who is choosing to sleep outside, which is again like the opposite of what a rabbit wants to do. Like, they want to be underground, they want to be safe because they are like, they have the whole 1,000 enemies, right? They are the prey to any number of predators. But Fiverr is just like, you know what? I'll just sleep out here and take my fucking chances because I'm not getting in that death trap.
Yeah, he's like, let the 1,000 take me. I'm not going to let that motherfucker take me because I don't know what's going on. But he smells weird and he's too fancy.
He's too fancy. The other thing I like about this book is the stories that they tell.
Yeah.
You know, they're rabbit stories. And do you know, or are you familiar at all with the Brer Rabbit stories?
You know, I'm not. No. I was thinking about that with this, though.
Yeah. I went through a phase because I'm a very weird person. So I was obsessed with those stories. The first time I heard them was from Disney's Song of the South, which is impossible to find anymore because it is super racist.
Yeah, I was about to say, that sounds like a bad thing.
Super racist. It's got Uncle Remus. I had it when I was a little girl. I had tons and tons and tons of, I guess, audiobooks. You used to be able to buy a children's book, and it would have either a tape or a record that accompanied it, right?
Ding,
and it would go,
turn
ding,
the page.
right?
Yes.
And I also had albums. My mom used to buy me albums of Disney shoes. So I had like Lady and the Tramp. I had an album for that, and Song of the South has a song called "That's What Uncle Remus Says" that I used to sing all the time. That's why the pig's got a curly tail, and it just anyway, super racist. But I had it when I was a kid because whatever. But there's a story.
The Song of the South was racist. Was the song racist? And you didn't realize it? Or
was Uncle Remus was explaining to little kids like why animals are the way they were, and Uncle Remus spoke in a very like stereotypical slave sort of vernacular, right?
Gotcha. Okay, yeah.
So these stories that made up Song of the South, which was Disney's take on the stories that were actually written in like the late 1800s. Mm-hmm. The guy who collected the stories and wrote them down, he wrote them all in that same sort of slave English, So when you read it, that's why it's like Brer. It's BRER with like an apostrophe, because it's brother. So it's brother. I'm
realizing
rabbit.
This is what kept me from getting into reading them.
Mm-hmm.
Was that I had this association of like there's something unsavory about them. I don't remember what that is, but
I was obsessed with it because I was obsessed with seeing the language like that, and it was really like trying to learn another language.
Yeah.
But Brer Rabbit is a trickster. He's a little bit of a ne'er-do-well. Who's always like trying to get the best of his contemporaries. And like the most famous story is the story of the Tar Baby. Have you ever heard that?
Oh,
face.
This is where it is. Yep. Okay. Go on.
Wait, what did you just remember?
This is the thing that made me go, no. But it was like, and I just didn't even remember that Brer Rabbit and Tar Baby were part of the same like universe.
Yeah.
But as soon as you said that, I'm like, that's why I never. Okay. Yep. Please continue.
So, Tar Baby is the story is Brer Rabbit is walking down the road one day, and Brer Fox, who is his nemesis, has created this Tar Baby, which is like a little thing that looks like a person, but it's stuffed with tar. And Brer Rabbit is going down the road, and he says, good day. And Tar Baby doesn't say anything back. And he says, I said good day to you, sir.
I said good day.
And Tar Baby doesn't say anything back. And Brer Rabbit gets so offended because he feels like he's being slighted and disrespected that he starts to physically fight the Tar Baby. And once he does, he gets caught and stuck. And he can't get disengaged from it. And then Brer Fox comes out and he's like, I got you, And then Brer Rabbit has to trick Brer Fox. And he throws him into the briar bush. He's like, oh, you can do anything you want to me, but please don't throw me in that briar bush, And the Brer Fox is like, oh, that's the worst thing that I could do? I'm going to do that. And throws him in the briar bush.
What
and
a sick fuck.
Brer Rabbit is able to escape. But the Brer Rabbit stories are based on West African folklore. And like Anisi from like American Gods. Like this idea of rabbits as tricksters. And I always wondered if Richard Adams was aware of that when he did this. And I've never really heard him speak to it specifically. But I think that's the other reason why I like these stories, because it was somehow familiar when I was reading them when I was a little kid, because I had this exposure to those other stories.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I kind of have that with loving like British children's literature and having a huge affinity for like English and Celtic fairy tales, because a lot of that stuff like ties into each other. So there is a sort of, especially as a kid, finding a common thread amongst things that are fictional, but they're based on stories that exist in the real world that makes you feel like it's more likely to be real. So yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, what they wind up finding out is that these rabbits are being cared for by a farmer that knows they're there and just kills them every now and then.
Right.
And they are willing to sacrifice various members of their warren in exchange for not having to go and hunt down food, with not having to worry about predators, because they're in a spot that just seems like nobody is going to come for them.
Yeah.
And
the farmer provides their food, provides their shelter, provides their safety, because he actually kills the predators that would normally be going after the rabbits. And they are willing to give up everything for that sense of security and being taken care of. And they are low-key hoping that our friend rabbits that are new to the group will be sacrificed. Like, they're hoping that, you know, well, we got these extra guys here, maybe the farmer will get one of them, you know, and that'll work out for us. So they don't warn our rabbits about what is actually happening here, and like to be careful.
Yeah, it's real ugly. It's like capitalism, and there's this, you know, the CEO of this company, and then this is like from like the regional manager down. Maybe not even. Maybe we're talking about a
trickle down economic.
Well, I'm thinking about like in terms of a franchise. You know, so this is like the owner of the franchise and his employees, and they bring in new blood of people who aren't totally disillusioned and like, you know, really good at working the system so that they can take advantage of them, because those people haven't had their spirits broken quite yet and don't know that they're going to be like used until they can be used no more, and finally just decide fuck it and leave. But Bigwig gets caught and very nearly dies, and I really thought he was dead, and I was upset.
It's really hard. It's horrifying. It's you know, it's bad. He gets caught in a snare, and he has to, because he's an outlet. He has experience that our regular rabbits don't have, so he knows that to be saved, they have to dig the peg out of the ground. But he has to try to explain that to them while he's practically bleeding to death. And
poor Fiver's like, peg? What's a peg? What?
Exactly, right? I love to, because it's like when you know, all of us have experiences, and we might be familiar with things based on like our job or where we're from or whatever that other people aren't familiar with, you know? So I might like say something and, good God, what is my cat doing? So yeah, they are just like, what the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck is a peg? And you know, they don't know. They don't work in that particular industry. They don't know the jargon.
Peg is a weird word. Peg. You finished those TPS reports?
It's weird that it's a word and also a name.
Yeah, that's true.
I have a weird thing with names that are things. I just do.
What's another one? Peg.
Bob.
Bob is a verb. Is that also a noun?
I guess it's, well, yeah, I guess I'm thinking it was an adjective, like a haircut.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Dick, for obvious reasons.
Moving right along. So they save Bigwig. He gets out, even though they all think he's dead. And Fiver has just given this fucking speech where he's like, motherfuckers, here's what's happening. And I'm like, low-key, Fiver, why did you not say this before? But it seems like he did not really know what was going on until he saw the wire, and then it all really became clear what was happening.
Right.
And also, like, he goes and tries to get help from Cowslip, and Cowslip is just like, go to bed.
Yep.
It's fucking brutal.
Hazel cannot believe it. He's like, that motherfucker said what?
Yeah, and that's the first thing that Bigwig says when he like regains consciousness is, I'll kill him. And I was like, good to have you back, Bigwig. And one of the rabbits from that warren, who is ashamed of himself and whose doe was caught and killed, has had enough. Yeah. And decides to come with them, and works very hard to prove himself over time that he is going to be worth the risk, because they all sort of feel like, you know, for obvious reasons, this guy cannot be trusted. He was about to let us all die.
Yeah. That's a Strawberry, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and okay, so here's the thing that did not bother me at all at first, but bothered me from this point on, which is the fact that there are no female characters of any consequence.
Yeah.
Until way later.
Yeah.
And even when they show up, they are nothing. Like, they are instrumental in Bigwig getting them out because they need to be for the story, because the does are the objective.
Mm-hmm.
But they are not, they don't really have personality. One of them gets, like, you know, gripped up and taken away and beaten until she, like, tells them everything. Mm-hmm. Another one dies as they escape. And the whole, like, treatment of does as just being, like, an accessory.
Yeah. They're just...
That was really tough for me.
When they recently released Watership Down on Netflix, they remade it. I watched it. It was okay. One of the things they did is they made, if I'm not mistaken, Strawberry, they made her female. And then spent the rest of the miniseries making her an object of desire between two other rabbits, so that they basically fight over her for the duration of the movie. And I was really disappointed, because if that's the only thing you could think to do with just female character that you're inserting into the story that didn't exist before, you could have just skipped it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird because, like, I at the same time, I also feel like just making her an object of desire that they fight over feels like it's staying true to the tone of the book and its treatment of does. Because they're concerned about getting does and not having enough, and that turning into a fight, and then that causing the breakup of the Warren. So, like, that's something that specifically is mentioned as a concern by Hazel early on.
Yeah. The thing in the book, and I'm not trying to, like, there's no defense of it. I mean, he wrote a book. He wrote an entire book. It didn't introduce any female characters until late in it. And then, like you just described, doesn't put nearly the amount of energy into creating real characters that he does in the male bunnies that we meet from the beginning, right? So that's just what he did, and there's really not a lot to be said that can make an excuse for that. The one thing I will say is the writer, I feel like, is hiding behind this idea that, well, of course rabbits would only care about does for breeding and warren digging, because they're not human like us. They don't have all these, you know, complicated feelings, and there's no nuance there. They're just, you know, animals. And I think he kind of took an easy out, when the truth is probably just that he's a male writer and it didn't fucking occur to him. That's all. Yeah. You know, like, no great mystery. He just didn't fucking think about it. Didn't think it would be important. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like it wasn't until after they meet the Cowslip gang and they mention does, because they meet Cowslip after they start to try and dig scratches, I think is what they call them, or scrapes. And they're realizing, like, does normally do this and we don't even know how to do this. Right. And then they meet Cowslip, and that was when I was like, oh my God, there's not a single female in this whole gang. Yeah. And then when it becomes a thing, it's only because, basically, in so many words, Hazel is like, man, I could really go for some fucking. And I just realized that we don't have anybody to fuck. So we're going to die out. Yeah. And we're basically going to have to raid another warren and steal them. Like they're carrots or something. Yeah. And, you know, it's framed in such a way that where they're coming from, they want to get away from. And it is a bad place. So that helps after the fact.
Right,
But the
right.
way that it's presented right from the beginning makes it pretty clear it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, the thing about the does is that, especially when we get to that part of the story, which I guess we probably should try to get moving on, but the does are languishing, right? Because there's not they have their own natural instinct, and their natural instinct is to breed and take care of like their own kits and everything. And there are these does that aren't getting an opportunity to do what comes natural to them, and so that they'll be willing to escape to try to be able to do, live how they feel they should live, and I don't know, serve their purpose or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's very, very clear in the book that that is all the does have to offer. Mm-hmm. And it's all that's expected. So it's not even like a weird judgment, like, oh, they're not good enough for adventure. It's just like, oh, that's just what they are, though. That's just all they do, And it's all they think they are, and all they think they should do, and it's really all that they want to do. So no harm, no foul.
Yeah, there's a weird thing with the overcrowding in that warren, so they're reabsorbing their young before they can give birth to them, which is a thing with rabbits, which is insane.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, we were talking, Krista a little while back had a chipped bone in her knuckle, and she was having some pain and finally went to a doctor, and the doctor was like, yeah, it's actually mostly like fine now though. Just wait, in your body will just reabsorb that little chip of bone. And I just commented that the human body is absolute mayhem. And I didn't even know the extent of it, because like the rabbit body, like, let's talk about biology for a second here. The evolution of certain species and what they are able to do is banana pants. And the fact that that female rabbits can get pregnant and their body knows enough about their circumstances to be like, no,
this isn't the right time.
I mean, it's basically, it's like, I'm jealous.
Oh my God.
You guys, this is why we're friends.
But at the same time,
the female body has ways of shutting that whole thing down.
Oh, we owe that senator an apology. He was talking about rabbits.
Oh, God, I wish somebody had made that joke to him when he said that.
Same.
And just been like, are you thinking... Did you read Watership Down recently? Because that's not humans. That's not how that goes. Like...
Oh, God.
But yeah, that's just like, that's just crazy to me. And like, evidently what they do is they can't reabsorb the bone. They reabsorb like the flesh and tissue, but then they like kind of give birth to like a skeleton, which is really horrifying.
It is unpleasant.
Like if you had a pet rabbit that gave birth to a skeleton, you would really think something was like really wrong.
We had a pet rabbit when I was a little girl. And I'm pretty sure we killed it because we kept feeding it like carrots and shit. Which turns out is not great for them.
Is it not?
They can't digest that shit. No. Domesticated rabbits, you can't feed them that kind of shit. So, yeah. My mom told us not to do it, but I had seen too many Bugs Bunny cartoons. There was, so me and my brother kept sneaking at carrots and shit, and it just...
It's like how you're really not supposed to feed cats milk. Like they can't process it. They don't have like the enzymes for it.
Right, right.
It's a nice treat every now and then, but it gives them serious diarrhea if they have too much of it, and that's not a full-time food for them.
We also had hamsters that ate their babies when I was little too.
Jesus Christ! No wonder you liked this book. You just had a way more like metal pet experience than I had.
It's true. It's true.
Christ. That is harsh.
Yeah.
Although that's a pretty effective, like, if you're a mother, you can just be like, do you remember what happened to those hamster babies?
I will never forget
because I will eat you if you don't shut the fuck up right now.
That's some circle of life shit to learn when you're like 6 and 7.
Yeah, damn.
So they eventually, they get away from Cowslip's Warren, and oh my God, it's so funny because they have to fight, and it's like these big ass rabbits can't fight for shit.
I love that detail. Like, and Holly says the same thing because they run across them later and say their names. They're like, hey, have you seen rabbits named Hazel and Fiver? And Cowslip's like, these fuckers, kill them. And they were outnumbered, and so they're really like worried for a second. And then all of a sudden they're like, wait, do you see this? They can just like shove and they just fucking topple over. Like, it's just, oh, well, I guess it's fine. They're very large though. Like, how? Yeah.
Oh, how could they be so big but so weak? It makes no sense.
Oh, I love that detail so much. And that's the thing that comes up later when Hazel decides that he's going to like go and save those hutch rabbits for no fucking reason.
Oh my God, Fiver is so
you?
mad. Fiver is so pissed off.
Fiver is the MVP of that whole thing because he straight up calls him a show-off, which is not even like wording that would have occurred to me, but is exactly what the fuck is happening.
Yep.
Hazel's straight up thinking to himself, oh, I'm kind of bored. What if I did this thing?
Yep.
They would be really impressed.
He's like getting high on his own supply. Hazel is, just a regular fucking rabbit. He was nobody special in the first Warren. And now through these series of adventures, he is Chief Rabbit. He has people that follow him, that listen to him, that trust him. And he's got this power now. And there's a law in the action. And he can't just chill. Excuse me. He has sent the other rabbits, on this hunt for this other Warren that is nearby. And he can't go because, they say, you're Chief Rabbit. Now you can't, it's like Picard on Star Trek. You can't be beaming down on every fucking mission. You're the captain.
Right.
And he can't just chill. He has to, like, have a big thing again. Something exciting's got to be happening. I have to be, doing daring deeds and whatnot. And Fiver is like, the fuck? like, why would you put yourself at risk for something with, so little gain? Like, this is just, what are you doing?
And not just yourself at risk. Like, if they hear that you're doing this, people are going to want to come with you because you're in charge and they want to be involved. And so they might get hurt, and that's going to be on you. Yeah. And
then what happens?
Yeah, it's really, it works out kind of well in a way because it's just Hazel that winds up getting really hurt. And he doesn't wind up having to have it on his conscience that somebody else, like, didn't make it back.
Right.
But he might have. I don't know what happened to the 2 rabbits that they wound up leaving behind. Because they only get 2 from the hutch, right? Of the 4.
Yeah, they only get the 2, I think.
Because the other 2 just sort of sit there like
they don't
dum-dums.
run. Yeah. And Hazel ends up getting really, really hurt eventually with this escapade.
Yeah.
And no one else gets hurt with him, but he ends up in a situation where the other rabbits have to then leave the safety of their warren on the down to go rescue him. And then they have to, like, stay with him for a couple of days and, keep guard over him. So he puts them at risk.
Yeah.
They have met Kahar by this point, which I don't know, like, in the movie, the voice actor does this nutso voice. I don't know where it comes from.
What is it?
And then, I don't remember who the actor is, but it made me laugh because in the audiobook, the narrator does this weird thing too. Like, I don't know why they're making him talk this way.
I mean, it sounds like he talks, like, he basically has like borderline Russian accent.
In the movie, to me, it sounded very almost like a Caribbean accent. Yeah. According to Adams, this character is based on a Norwegian he knew. I don't know enough about Norwegian accents. I don't know, like, I don't know.
That makes sense with mutter for mothers.
Oh.
Yeah, because he uses that word a lot.
But yeah, what did you think of this? Because before we meet Kahar, there's a kind of a throwaway where Hazel helps a mouse who is escaping from an owl, I think it is. And they're all just like, what? What are you doing? And Hazel's like, no, I think I'm on to something, you know. I help them, and then they're going to turn around and help me sometime. And then that actually really comes to fruition with Kahar, who ends up being a huge help to them.
Yeah.
And also really enjoys being, like, catered to and having
that.
food brought to him. And Bigwig is so smitten with this damn bird.
So this really felt like Redwall to me, because in Redwall, he is like on this mission to go get something that's on the roof, and you know they're very small, they're mice, and the roof is a big deal, and he goes up there and starts getting attacked by sparrows that feel that he is in their territory, and the sparrows talk like this, like. It's not exactly the same, but it's really similar, where they're just like, Killy, we killy once, we killy twice. Like, that kind of, like, weird, they leave off contractions and verbs and whatnot, you know, completely. So, I found it really interesting that he decided to do that also with a bird, specifically, and have this very particular kind of dialect.
I wonder if that's based on what that comes from.
Yeah, I
don't know.
I don't remember. Like, I'm sure Redwall was written after this. I'm pretty positive. So I would think that if anything, Brian Jacques based that on this guy.
Oh, that's interesting.
But yeah, it's a pretty, like, that character, that sparrow, was one of my favorite things in the world as a kid, because he's just so bananas. And he says, like, killing you once is too good for you. I'm going to kill you twice. And really seems to believe that it can do that. The precious little thing. But the fact that he starts to, like, figure out how they all can get along with other animals and have their backs feels to me like we're heading towards Redwall territory. We're gonna have a commune in this area. They will build walls and have a small kingdom and farming and whatnot before too much longer. But yeah, I really loved him as a character, and the fact that he, like, at first he thinks that they're gonna hurt him when rabbits don't eat birds. Like, that's not a thing. Right. But he doesn't know, because he doesn't seem to, like, even know what rabbits are.
Yeah, I feel like as a bird, all the ground animals of a certain size are just all one thing to him. You know, like, why bother knowing the particulars of the differences between them? You know, they all have zero impact on his life. Like, he's, you know, but now he's one wing down, so now he's trapped. With these beings that, quite frankly, he probably has to think are lower. You know, like, if I could fly, I'm going to be really patronizing to everybody who cannot fly. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't mean to be, but I totally would be. Like, y'all non-flying motherfuckers, you can't tell me shit.
What is it that Tracy Jordan says? There's a pigeon that's trying to eat his French fries, and he's like, "What are you doing, pigeon? You're better than this. Don't you know you could fly?" And it's just a really, like, good moment that I feel like sums that up pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Don't you know you can?
Don't you know you could fly? I saw a pack of wild dogs successfully take over and run a Wendy's.
And my favorite thing. Oh God. So Kahar is how they find out about the other Warren.
Right. And that's right. Because Kahar is also how they found out about the Hutches. So they go to, like, send envoys to the Warren while Hazel is out here acting a fucking fool.
Yep. And they go, and it's Holly.
They don't send Bluebell because everybody's
he can't be trusted. He's gonna fucking tell a joke and insult somebody and start a fucking war.
Yeah, Bluebell's like me when like 5 years ago, where I really still did not know when to shut the fuck up. Like, I thought I did, but I did not. And I think I do now. I probably will look back on this and realize that I also
in 5 years' time, you'll be like,
yeah.
I still didn't know how to shut the fuck up.
But he sees a moment where something is just a perfect setup, and he just says it. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, everybody's like, yeah, all right. I guess that's funny.
I guess.
But nobody,
God.
Nobody wants him around a potentially, peppery rabbit chieftain.
I watched comedians in cars getting coffee.
Oh, why?
Before we started recording. I love that, even though I shouldn't. And it's Jerry, and the guest is Eddie Murphy. I was fucking crying. But one of the things that Jerry says, he's talking about how the difference with comedians, because they all fucking jerk themselves off all the time.
Right.
One of the things he says is how there's nothing that's off limits for comedians when they're around other comedians. Mm-hmm. And he said, there's some things you're just not supposed to say. Like, someone calls and tells me that so-and-so dies, and my first thought is, it was really enough with that guy anyway. And I laughed so fucking hard. I laughed. Oh, my God.
Oh, God. Yeah, that feels right. Yeah, Bluebell does seem like they'd just be like, well, we aren't interested in sending does, because then Bluebell'd be fucking saying something like, are you sure your dicks are bigger than ours? Like, he'd say something, and they'd all just be like, fuck! Why did we bring you?
This was a terrible idea. You come in. So they opt to leave him at home, and it's Holly and maybe Silver and two other
Buckthorn, maybe.
I think he comes back with them from there when they make the escape.
Oh, okay, got you.
But so they go to this warren, and they're going to just hey guys, got some does,
I hate it so much. It makes me so mad, RoShawn.
And they're thinking that they're going to be well respected, because their thing is, well, this place is overcrowded. They can't use all the does they have. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't they want to let some go? It'll lessen the burden of having to feed everybody. They're looking at it, it's just logistics, right? Mm-hmm. Not even whether or not the does would be happier. They don't really care about that. But
no.
They really are going into it it's going to be very transactional. No big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And what they find is a warren that is also gone against the nature of rabbits, but in a completely different way than the snare warren. Mm-hmm. This is rabbit life culture, whatever, taken to an obscene extreme. It's completely authoritarian. There is no freedom of movement. The rabbits are marked, which is they can't even, our rabbits can't even wrap their heads around could you even heard of such a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's no good.
I feel like the first ones were capitalists, and then this is more like meant to be communists. But like communism gone real wrong, you know, the bad kind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they get to this warren, and these rabbits are like, they have the Oslo, and it is like on steroids. Mm-hmm. You know,
literally, like if they had steroids, I'm sure they would take.
They would be on.
Definitely, yes.
You know, they have, each rabbit is assigned to a particular mark. You know, they scar each other, like that's how you, like, it's an actual mark that they're wearing, you know, from a scar. And they eat according to wherever they are housed, like they're on schedules, feeding schedules. And it doesn't matter whether or not it's day or night. Like when it's time to feed, that's the only time you get. If you miss it, then you're just hungry until the next time it rolls around. There's no freedom of choice of like mating. It's,
Yeah.
And
when later on, Bigwig is just like, so are there any rules around mating? And the officer is like, rules? You want a doe, you take one. That's one of the perks of being an officer, obviously. It's just like, oh, I hate this. I hate everything about this.
Yeah.
The handling of does in this story is bad. It's just bad. It's BAD. Also, can we talk about how weird it is that they're called does and bucks, but then the babies are kittens?
I think that is just a thing, right?
I mean, I don't think that's incorrect, but it's weird.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
It is. It's. I always forget that the babies are called kittens. Bucks and does, I'm used to. But yeah,
fawns wouldn't be terrible for baby bunnies to call them fawns. It feels appropriate.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I care for that either.
But yeah, anyway, sorry, I interrupted. Continue.
That's probably because of the girl at the cult was named Fawn, though. So I have. Yeah, her name was Fawn.
Gotcha. Of course it was. The girl at the cult was named Fawn is a question that I shouldn't even ask what you mean. Like, that just makes sense.
The princess. She was, too. She was the princess of the cult. But anyway, so our guys...
These are the little tastes you guys are going to get for when her memoir finally comes out.
So what happens is our rabbits show up here and they're questioned and then they are told where they're going to be and they have to get out. And it is harder than they thought it would be to get out because this is a well regulated militia, basically. It's not what we have in the United States. It's something better than what we offer.
Oh God.
And they end up having to, I think Holly pretends to give the captain of where he is like a fake message or something. The chief wants to see you. Chief fucking Woundwort, which is, he's a monster.
Yeah, he is.
But, and they make a break for it. And eventually the other rabbits realize what's happening. And I think this is when they run across the train, right? When they're making their getaway. And because they are going to get caught. Like, they get a head start, but these rabbits are, and he makes a point to tell us, you can't beat them. Like,
right.
They know this area. Doesn't matter the weather. They know, they're practiced. They're, again, really well trained. They're like a fucking single unit, Our rabbits are not going to get away. And the only reason they survive is because when they cross the tracks, there's a train coming. And that, I think Holly says he's not even sure if they died. He doesn't know what happened to them.
Yeah.
As far as he knows, this fucking miracle thing came down from
Deus
heaven.
Ex Machina. Deus Ex Trania.
Right? It came down and smited all their enemies as far as he can tell.
That must be a good feeling.
Listen, I'm waiting for some smiting. I'd like to do some smiting. So by the time our guys get back to Watership Down, we have Hazel, who has been shot trying to sneak into the hutches. And we have our guys who are tired as fuck and a little freaked out because this was a harrowing experience.
Yeah.
And they still need to figure out what the fuck they're going to do about does. This is still a fucking problem. And they decide that they're going to go back to this warren and get some bitches.
I hate you. But yes, that is accurate.
And so then we get into what is really just a plan to get in, get some doughs, and get out. And this is when we meet the two doughs at Ifrafra, however you say it.
Yeah, don't ask me. Like, both of their names
Heisenthal,
are honestly...
I think.
What?
Heisenthal is one of them, right? Heisenthal.
Okay. Yeah, it starts with an N. We can just call them N Rabbit and H Rabbit. And they're the only ones, like, because what the plan involves is sending in Bigwig to be an apparent lone rabbit who escaped from a warren that was destroyed by men. And, like, that's part of the backstory on Woundwort, is that his family was all, like, his father was reckless and was killed by the owner of a garden that he would just fucking traipse in and out of, thinking that he owned the place. And then his mother flees and with him, but she's injured also by gunfire, and they wind up getting cornered by, like, a weasel that kills his mother in front of him, but is too full from eating his mother to bother with him, and so he gets sort of left. And somebody finds him, a person finds him, and raises him on milk, but that does not soften his nature. He does not become a domestic rabbit. It's like that experience scarred him so deeply that he's just does not come back from that ever. Yeah,
he is, like, fanatical in his attempt to, because everything he does with his warren is about being hidden. You know, everything is about not making themselves known to man that's around them. You know, so the feeding schedules are all about, because we can't have all the rabbits out at once, you know, because that's going to, hey, look at us, we're a bunch of rabbits, you know.
Indeed.
About controlling where they can go, because, again, like, if you wander out somewhere, some animal or a man might follow you back, and then you'll just lead destruction back to the warren, you know. And this is all coming from his incredibly traumatic experience with his parents as a young rabbit, so that he doesn't see himself as being cruel. He sees himself as doing what it takes to keep them safe, you know.
I feel like there's also just a power hungry thing, though, as well. I feel like it starts from a point of wanting to help and do good, and then it turns. It's just mutated into this other, like, you know.
Well, that's
so
the thing
it
with
becomes
power,
just
though.
all control, and for the sake of it. Like, I feel like it started off as genuinely, I want everybody to be safe, and then it kind of, like, they are safe. They are, and he can't let it go. He enjoys it after a point, you know.
He feels like the minute he takes his foot off the pedal, that everything is just going to go to shit.
Right.
You know, if he lightens up for just a second, it's all going to fall apart. He is the only one capable of keeping everyone safe, and that's why everybody should listen to him without question. Right? So Bigwig is going to be impressive, because Bigwig is impressive. Just, you know, that's just what it is, you know. But he's a big, strong, battle-worn rabbit. You know, anybody would want him on their forces.
And it works out because Woundwort has just lost, like, 3 in the past, like, couple of days. And is sort of wondering what the hell he's going to do, because he doesn't have enough officers. And here comes this rabbit who, one of the ones that he lost, he realizes later, died at the paws of a fox. And he realizes that it was probably Bigwig that actually led the fox into his direction. And Bigwig, when he's questioned about this, he stands his ground and is just basically like, look, I didn't know they were there. I wasn't trying to lead anybody into anybody. I was trying to escape a fucking fox. I don't really think that's my problem.
Right. Like, I didn't ask them to come sit there.
Exactly.
Like, they were just wrong place, wrong time, and you can't hold me responsible for that. Like, any of you would have done the same thing I did.
And I like the fact that he keeps a cool head in that conversation.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's so great, too, because, like by the time we get to this part of the story, our rabbits they're not the same as when they left. You know, there's been growth for all of our main rabbits. Hazel, Fiver, Bigwig, even like Dandelion and Blueberry, because they've all...
You mean Blackberry?
Blackberry and Bluebell. Mm-hmm. Two different rabbits. Blackberry is the one that comes up with the floating.
Right.
You know,
Blackberry's the smart one.
Yeah. They've been like tested and come out the other side a little bit, you know, and Bigwig at the beginning is, you think he's just one way, you know. He's just gruff and he's got no tact. He can't, he's got no guile, you know. He's just big and wants to fight. And now we see him in a situation where he knows how to play a part, you know.
Yeah, I like the lead up to it too, because like Bigwig starts to be really aggressive again as they head towards that warren to like initiate their plan, and he's willing to do what he needs to do, but he's. I think it's like meant to be a combo of things, of him being like worried about this mission, and also his friend the bird is getting better, and after this is done, he's gonna leave. Yeah,
he's so upset about that too.
Yeah, you know, I just like, he's just made a friend. He would have made a good bird. He would have made a good battle bird.
Yeah, he's heartbroken at the idea that Kahar is going to be leaving, and Kahar is trying to explain to him that, you know, I have to go. This is where I'm supposed to be. And Bigwig has been like listening to his stories. At one point, and Hazel was like, "Do you believe him?" And he's like, "I don't know, but it sounds really good." Like when he's trying to tell him about the ocean, you know, and they're just like, water that never ends. Water that moves fast.
The way that he describes it too, he's like, and he says that there's no other side to the water. Well, yeah, there is, because he says he's been there, but like it's just, the whole way he contradicts himself like mid sentence, and then tries to be like, but still it makes sense, and they're like, does it? So yeah, I love Bigwig's like fascination with this bird.
Yeah. So the plan is he's going to be on security detail, and they're going to hook up with these rabbits that Holly and them met, right? And that those two does in the interim are supposed to have been campaigning to find out who else would want to go. Right. What other does want to leave. And the actual plan is... What is the actual plan?
I think the actual plan is just meant to be that they're supposed to like come above ground like at sunset, and that what's the name of the bird again? Kahar. He's supposed to like cover their backs, and I don't think that they realize that if they try and leave, that fucking...
Why'd you just freeze?
I think that RoShawn froze. Did she freeze for you guys? I'm watching this now. I'm like, oh no. Okay, so everybody, I was mid-sentence with RoShawn. I noticed that she had frozen. We thought that there was just like an error with Crowdcast, but it looks like RoShawn's internet went out in the middle of our conversation. Thankfully, we were very, very close to the end of the book. So I think we aren't going to be doing much disservice if we wrap it up here. But I'm just going to finish like the last 5 minutes or so by myself, because we are going to... We had already been in the middle of like the tactics for getting the does out of the other warren, and what winds up happening is that they, you know, use all of this. There's the floating that comes back up again because they find a boat, and the bird manages to like take Woundwort out of commission for long enough for them to escape. And then Woundwort comes after them in their own warrens because they vastly underestimated how hard he was going to take that loss, and that he was really going to see it as like a blow to his authority. And there comes like this fucking epic battle in which they go to the neighboring farm and release the dog from his leash. so that he comes and attacks and scatters them all. And in the end, Woundwort isn't killed. Like, everybody sort of suspects that he is still out there alive somewhere. But it is pretty, like, it's an open-ended enough ending for a villain in a story for children, and I say that in quotes because it's not like a child story, but if you get what I mean, like, not having a decisive, real victory over the bad guy that you can see and know for sure you have had is a pretty bold choice. And then there's just, RoShawn's whole power just went out. She just texted me. That sucks. She has that happen a lot in her apartment. I have that happen a lot here too, actually. Man, that sucks though, especially when it's this hot. But Warren winds up doing well. They're like able to, procreate. Not that the does get much to do or say about it other than that. Everybody really respects Hazel and they're just, they rally behind him for the remainder of his life, which turns out to be a lot longer than it normally is for rabbits. And then Hazel basically just like passes away at a ripe old age after being led away by a mysterious rabbit full of light that's got like a weird rabbit halo kind of in its ears. And leaves feeling like he has really accomplished something, like everybody here is safe and happy. And it's beautiful, and also it's crazy. It's crazy, right? Like for a story about rabbits to have this like profound death scene at the end. But I was okay with it. It just, this whole thing was so not what I expected. And by the time I got there, I wish I had been more open by then, because I was having such a hard time getting into the story that by the time I reached this scene, which I feel like was meant to be a lot more emotional and high impact, I was tired of the story. And I wish I didn't feel that way, especially because part of what I had wanted was like a battle thing. And then that's what you get actually in the end. But I don't know what it was that failed to connect for me. I just don't know why I grew as impatient as I did, as quickly as I did, and why it lasted. But I'm glad that RoShawn loves this story so much and that she was my co-host on this, because, I like having things be balanced out. And that's the point of childhood favorites, is to revisit things that you used to love and see if they still hold up. And for her, it definitely did, clearly. But yeah, coming into it in my frame of mind, it just, combined with the style of story not really working for me in a lot of ways. And then the way that any female rabbit is treated as just like a complete non-entity, it was really tough for me. So there was that. And, not everything is going to be a winner. There are some things that I feel like it's better if you come to them as a child. And this feels like one of those for me, at least. I don't know if that would be true of everybody, but I feel like it's a good spot to stop. So I'm sorry that we got interrupted. RoShawn and I intend to do a UNsober in a couple of hours, so hopefully her internet will be back for that, because that would be a bummer. But I really appreciate all of you guys joining us. I'm sorry that we didn't talk about some of the comments here we just got so like focused on our thing, which happens with us sometimes. Kyle mentioning the phonetic accents in Redwall being a lot, and they really are. I mean, my favorite one in particular are the moles, who talk in this like bananas way that I love. But that was part of the charm. That was my fave. All right, guys. Well, thank you for sticking through. Sorry about this again. I hope you still had fun. And hopefully those of you who are $20 and up patrons will get to see us later doing UNsober. We will be doing advice. And I will see you then soon. And until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Podcast.